Welcome, Scrum Academy family. I'm your Scrum coach, Scott Adams. Are we seeing a shift in the landscape? Let's talk about that right after this. First of all, I want to thank John. I was on vacation when he sent me this article. I looked at my text, I read the article, and ladies and gentlemen, when I first read this, I was floored. I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was this bad. The idea of tech workers in Silicon Valley, it's not just Silicon Valley, by the way, being benched or fired simply for not being from a specific nationality. Wow. This article's from the siliconvalley.com. Now let me transition and talk about John that sent me the article. Now, John is a serial Scrum Master, which you will learn about very, very soon if you decide to come to the free Give Yourself a 100% Raise challenge. Now, John was at a point where he was working maybe 3 or 4 contracts at this particular time. Now, John worked for an Indian company, not cognizant, but he was going through the same process. They put him on the bench. They began to give him less and less work. He read the writing on the wall. And he called me one day. He's like, "Hey, man, I feel like I'm going to get fired." I'm like, okay, what are the signs? What are you seeing? Well, they doing this, they doing that. I'm like, yeah, that's the old school playbook. Yeah, you reading the writing on the wall. Yeah, you're probably going to get fired. He's asking me, well, what should I do? I'm like, well, you got 3 other gigs. You got 3 other contracts. It's not going to impact your family really at all. So you could go ahead and quit today, or you can just wait, see how it plays out. Because right now we just have speculation. So he wrote it out. They fired him. About 30 days later, after we had that conversation, he called me. He said, "Scott, guess what?" I said, "What, John?" He said, "I lost my job today, man." And he's laughing. I said, "John, how does that feel?" Now, probably 2 or 3 years before John became my client, John had lost his job once upon a time. But that was the only job that John had. So just like you, if you lose your job today and all you have is one stream of income, oh my God, you putting your family at a huge risk that you pretty much have to do with that company or wherever you work at. You got to do what they say, knowing that you're probably miserable as heck. I don't want that for anybody. Because remember, the reason I do Scrum is I'm trying to recreate the elements of a kindergarten class so everybody can unleash their superpower. And you won't do that as an adult until we're in an environment that is psychologically safe. All these other variables that go along creating that, you never will do that under those circumstances where you feel like you got to do something for fear of getting fired or whatever. Yeah, I can't stand that. So John got fired. We talking on the phone. And he was actually happy. He's like, "Man, it's a bird and all my." We laughing and joking about it. I said, "John, how does it feel now that you got multiple streams of income versus back then?" I was in that stage too, where I only had one stream of income and I lost that one stream of income. Oh my God, it was like the end of the world. Yeah, I know that feeling very, very well. If you never had that feeling, I hope nobody ever goes through that. That is rough. I mean, you feel like you're nothing when that happens to your family, to your friends. But that's John. John gave himself a raise previous years before that, still continued to give himself a raise. And let me tell you one more thing about John. I wrote about John in the book Mastering Millionaires as well. Talk about a story. You know John is in law school if you read the book. Exactly. The question becomes, you hear about this interview at the challenge. We're gonna go deep dive into John. Yeah, he's gonna be he's raw and uncut anyway. So yeah. So you go get that. You can look forward to that. So John is in law school. But the question is, why is John in law school? Because John remembered all those bad times where he was working for a company that he felt like he was treated like a doggone slave. And John hasn't recovered from those wounds. John is very vocal. John is very confrontational now. John embodies the value of courage because he has plenty of money in the bank and he don't have to take what people just offer him. In fact, in the challenge, I'm going to tell you about a negotiating thing that he did. Go ahead and give it to you right now. A little bit off topic, but that's okay. Bear with me. It's good information for you. John called me about a week ago. He called me on a Thursday. He said, man, I need to give myself another 100% raise. I said, okay, cool. He asked me if I had any leads. At the time, I didn't have any leads. So he called me the next day, Friday. He said, Scott, I think I got an opportunity to give myself a 100% raise today. He had an interview that morning. Felt like it went well. And while we was on the phone talking, he said, man, this is the recruiter calling me back. Let me call you back. He did. He called me back in about 15 minutes. And they made him an offer. Now, the original offer was $35 per hour. And he shared with me, he said, Scott, I really didn't want the job. I'm eating popcorn. I told the lady right now I'm busy. I'm eating my food. I really don't want to be bothered with this. I really don't have time for this. She's like, oh, and he's a developer. He's like, oh, John, we need your skill set. We need you to come and work. We need this. We need that. He's like, well, for $35 an hour, that certainly ain't in the ballpark. See, one of the things I taught John and I teach my students is, get the interview. If your skill set is what it is, forget the number. Forget the whatever they offering. That's just what they offer. Okay, but the question becomes, what can you negotiate? So that's not a turnoff for me. When I see $50 an hour on a contract or whatever, if it's something I want to do, I still have the interview. I'm very confident in my negotiating skill. I look at that number as, that's just a starting number. That ain't where we're going to end. I mean, right now, you ain't even in the ballpark with $35 an hour. He knew that. Say, nothing else, I get practice on interviewing. So he negotiated $80 per hour. That conversation lasted 15 minutes. And he treated her like she was definitely inconveniencing him because he was trying to eat his Cheetos. He wasn't having dinner. He was just eating Cheetos, sitting in the chair chilling. See, you see, that is a rich girl. And I hope each and every one of you get to that point so that you won't ever have to feel in life that you have to take what is offered. What else can I say about John? Oh, forgot about this part. So now when John got fired from that company, about 2 months later, the company called him back. They said, John, we need you back, man. We need you to come back. Now, John and I knew why they was calling him back. Yeah, because he knew, again, this is an Indian company, remember? Father, this is not Cognizant. This is another Indian staffing firm. And this Indian staffing firm has a contract with the federal government. Why is that important? Well, the federal government is very clear in terms of what you need and what you're going to have to keep that contract with the federal government. So they called John out of desperation and said, hey, John, we need you back because not only did you leave, but a whole bunch of other minorities left, and now we in a bind. John's like, what's your bind? Playing dumb, right? John's like, what's your bind? Well, we need you to come back. They made it sound like it was a skill set, but it was because of his skin color. John is a minority, right? Their numbers was off for that federal contract. So John knew he had them. You figure out the rest. John knew he had leverage. So he called me, told me about that deal. He said, Scott, what should I do? I said, John, I want you to think about, what do you want? I mean, go wild. What do you wild want? And ask for that. He called me back about 2 hours later. He said, Scott, I asked for wild stuff. And I got all of my wild things. I said, okay, John, when do you start? He said, I'm not going to take the job. I said, why? He said, because I'm no longer going to be a slave. I ain't mad at you, man. He had negotiated something like $200 an hour, all remote. He asked for he asked for some crazy stuff. He was going to get 30 days worth of paid vacation. That's unheard of as a contract worker, right? Oh, he negotiated crazy. Oh, he's a beast now. Oh my God. So that's John.